Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm so happy you're here today. Welcome back to another Grey's Anatomy and Makeup Monday. My name is Katey Unfiltered and I am very excited that you're here today. On Mondays, I sit down, I play with makeup, and we talk about an episode of Grey's Anatomy. So if that sounds like your thing, if you just want to play with makeup, want to hang out, feel free to stick around. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. And if you like this video, please don't forget to give it a like down below. It really helps my channel. I post new videos on this channel every Monday and Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern. I'm having a lot of fun and I'd love for you to just join in the Unfiltered fam. I'm just excited to honestly be sitting down and playing with makeup. It is Saturday night and it's been such a weird day. The weather was amazing, incredible, because it's been so cold and rainy for so long. It was just so nice to have great weather. I drove around with the windows down, but yeah, just a really weird day. And I'm kind of excited to just sit down and play with makeup and do something different. I feel like this was a very boring makeup week for me. There was just a lot going on. So I'm really excited to sit down and play. And this week's episode is one that is pretty fun. A lot happens. Now that we're getting really into the episodes, we're on episode 4 now. Episode 4 of season 1. A lot is happening. We've established our characters, we've established some of their problems, and so the episodes are getting really juicy and fun. I'm just having a fun time putting together my notes and getting ready for these videos for you guys, because I do watch each episode multiple times and take a ton of notes to get ready for this. So the commitment is really real, but I mean, it's requiring me to just watch Grey's Anatomy over and over again, which, I mean, it's not really a problem for me. So to do a little bit of a recap and refresher on last week's episode and just kind of where we are to date, we have our core interns, Meredith, George, Izzy, Christina, and Alex, and they're all surgical interns at Seattle Grace Hospital. So they all work for Bailey. Bailey is their boss, their resident. They're all in training to become surgeons, so it's this really intense program. In our last couple of episodes, Meredith agreed to let George and Izzy move in, so they're all living together now in Meredith's mom's old house. Meredith's mom, Ellis Grey, is this really famous surgeon. She's like won a ton of awards, really talented surgeon. She's in a nursing home because she has early onset Alzheimer's, but she doesn't want anyone to know that. So no one knows except for Meredith that this really famous surgeon that everyone's always talking about, that everyone loves, actually is like losing all sense of herself and is in this nursing home. We also have McDreamy. So Derek Shepard, the neurosurgeon, he's really into Meredith and he's just chasing her down at every chance that he gets because he's just totally obsessed with her. They went out on one date before they realized that they were coworkers and they were going to work together. And now that they work together, he's basically just chasing her around the hospital all the time, begging her to go out with him. And essentially, you need to know that no one follows the rules at any given time. Everyone is constantly breaking the rules on the show. So if you're expecting them to act like normal, responsible human beings, like, this is not the show for you. So this episode starts with George in the shower at the house, and Izzy just barges into the bathroom in her underwear, and she's wearing this like Hello Kitty red underwear, and she barges into the bathroom while George is in the shower and just starts brushing her teeth, and she straight up just walks in, doesn't care that George is in there. George, being the like awkward sweet soul that he is very embarrassed and is like, hello, I'm showering in here. What the heck? Get out. And Izzy's like totally comfortable and confident and doesn't give a rat's ass if anyone sees her in her underwear or naked. She's just very confident. And she grabs a toothbrush, which happens to be George's, and walks down to the kitchen where she sees Meredith. Meredith is sitting at a desk writing a check to her mom's nursing home. But as we know, nobody knows about Meredith's mom in the nursing home. So we see Izzy, who like has zero boundaries, and Meredith that has way too many boundaries and doesn't tell anyone anything. And I think my favorite thing is just this idea of this grown woman walking around a house wearing Hello Kitty underwear. She's got an MD. She's a doctor and she's studying to be a surgeon, and she walks around a house with roommates in Hello Kitty underwear. And that's just the level of confidence that I'd like to go for in life. Like that's the vibe that I want to, that's the pinnacle that I want to reach. So they all have gotten gotten ready for work. They go to the hospital and everything kicks into high gear. It's super early in the morning. It's like 4:30 a.m. These people start work at crazy, crazy hours. And Bailey is telling all the interns that if they do a shitty job, she's going to come after them and make their lives a living hell. Meredith is getting ready and she's talking to Christina, and Christina's like, today's the day. Today is the day. I'm getting into surgery. Ooh, ooh, yes, it's happening. And I feel like she does this a lot and she's like constantly wrong. And Meredith's like, well, what do you know? Like, why do you think that you're getting into this surgery? And she's like, I'm not telling you anything. Christina's like, well, I know I got here at 4 and you got here at 4:30 and I'm not the intern who's screwing and attending. Okay. For two people that I felt were becoming friends, them's fighting words. Sister. That is not okay. I know I like to go hard and I'm big on teasing people, but like, there's a line. I definitely wouldn't say that, but I think that was just the writer's way of reminding us that Meredith and Derek have slept together. I think that's almost like a reminder for the audience rather than it being an actual jibe from Christina, because it really just doesn't fit their relationship like at all. So the interns have gotten there super early because they're supposed to do rounds on their patients, which means that they go around and they like check on all the patients, see how they're doing, and just generally do a checkup on their patients before the attendings get there so that when the attendings go and check on their patients, the interns can quickly run them through all the details and kind of take care of everything and help them move really, really quickly. They're basically just doing like a check-in before the check-in. Surprisingly, Derek is actually the type of person that got there early enough to try and buy Meredith, the intern, breakfast. So remember, it's 4:30 a.m. and they're all there because the attendings aren't supposed to be there at this time, but there he is. Derek has shown up and he's there and he's asking Meredith if she wants breakfast. And she's like, no, I already had an old grilled cheese for breakfast. So no, sir, thank you very much, but no. And he continues to just like go after her and he asks her out again. And Meredith insists on continuing to be professional and she brushes him off. And, you know, another round of applause for Meredith for really just like hanging in there, sister. I don't know that many women would be able to resist for that long, but another round of applause for Meredith and her perfect yet totally incomprehensible self-restraint. So we find out that Christina's patient that she came in super, super early to steal is someone that used to be a nurse at the hospital. She used to be a scrub nurse, which is basically the nurse that helps out while the surgeon is in surgery. They're their right hand. She's been actually a former scrub nurse at the same hospital. So she's this like total badass legend in the hospital. But this lady is super sick. Like her liver is failing. She's not doing well. Her eyes are all yellow because her liver isn't doing its job. And Christina has decided that she's going to try to get in on the surgery, which is called a Whipple. And it's this super rare type of surgery that really only happens every like 6 months to a year. So Christina really wants to be the intern that's assigned to this case. And that's why she got there early. That's why she's being all cagey and trying to steal the case. But Nurse Fallon is no idiot. Like she understands what Christina is trying to do. And she just starts calling her out on it. She starts asking Christina, you know, questions like, oh, did you get here early so that you could steal my surgery and try to be the intern on the case? Like, don't worry, I have all the tricks figured out. You can't fool me. I know your game. And Nurse Fallon is like, well, at least tell me your name if you're going to be my doctor. And Christina replies and says, my name is Yang, Christina Yang. And Nurse Fallon replies and says, I'll call you Christina, but you can call me Nurse Fallon. Like, total badass. He's like clearly trying to say like, you ain't shit, girl. You have no idea what I've seen and what I've been through. I'll call you Christina, but you call me Nurse Fallon. Izzy is rounding on a patient named Mr. Humphreys. He's asleep when she goes into his room and she flips on the lights and she's just very, very kind about it, giving him a lot of time to wake up so that she can give him a checkup. And she's like, hey, just sit up, you know, being really gentle, being really sweet. Like, hey, I know I'm waking you up. I just have to do a quick check-in. And the guy sits up and he turns around and he like freaks out on her and is like, get out of my room. You can't be in here. Get out. I want another doctor. like anyone but you. I can't have it be you. And she's like, look, I just have to check your lungs. I just have to give you a checkup. It'll be super fast. I promise it's going to be fine. And the guy's like, no, is this you? And he pulls out a magazine and he flips to a page and he says, is this you? And it's Izzy in an ad. As you remember, Izzy is a former model, and he flips to this page and he shows her, and it's her in a Bethany Whisper lingerie ad. And he's like, is this you? And she's like, look, I'm a doctor now. I just need to do my job. I just need to do a checkup. And he's like, no, you're not touching me. Get out of here. I need a real doctor. And he sends her out, and she's just like, devastated. Meanwhile, George is trying to talk to Meredith, and he's like, you have to set some boundaries in the house. She can't just walk around, you know, the house in her underwear. Like, it's your house. You have to set some rules. And Meredith's like, oh, so you have a crush on Izzy? Is that what's going on? And George is like, no, I don't have a crush on Izzy. Like, that's crazy. And he's really intense about it. He's like, no, I don't have a crush on her at all. She's not the one that I like. She's not the one that I'm attracted to. And Meredith is like, oh, so there's a one. And Meredith's like clearly not getting that George is trying to tell her like, hey, I'm into you by making this comment. But it's so George to just not actually say what he means, but to try to like leave hints for Meredith to pick up on, and she's just like totally oblivious. Anyway, so George is off the hook from responding because they run into Bailey, and she grabs them and sends them into Derek because he has an emergency surgery. And it's this guy that fell down a flight of stairs with a nail gun in his hand, and he got like 9 nails like in his skull. And he's awake. This guy has a bunch of nails in his head, and he is awake and talking like nothing is going on. It's insane. He's asking for his wife, you know, where's his wife? Where's his wife? And he needs to be sent for a CT, but the CT scanner is down. And of course, they can't take him for an MRI because that's basically a giant magnet, and it's going to pull all the nails out of this guy's head. So that's not really an option, but they need to get a clear picture. And Alex is actually the one that figures out a different type of scan that they can do to figure out where the nails are in the guy's head. So Alex is now on the case as well. Meanwhile, Meredith goes and gets a history from the guy's wife, and it turns out that the guy's actually been having dizzy spells. This isn't the first incident that he's had something going on with his head, and it sounds like maybe something has happened to make the guy fall down the stairs with a nail gun in his hand. Like maybe it's not just a simple accident. And as we know, Meredith has this, like, I don't know, sixth sense for tracking down brain tumors. She did it in the first episode, or that was an aneurysm. But something about this girl is all about that brain shit. So she collects this information and like goes to take it back to Derek. As Meredith is on her way to go and give Derek an update, she gets called into a meeting with Bailey and the chief. And Christina is there because they want to talk about Nurse Fallon. It turns out that Nurse Fallon was actually Ellis's scrub nurse. So not only was this lady a scrub nurse at the hospital for 18 years, but she worked directly with Meredith's mom. And so the chief has called her in to basically say like, hey, I think it'd be really great if you were the intern on this case since she worked with your mother. Maybe you guys would have a lot to talk about. That could be really cool. And Christina's like pissed because Christina got there super early and she's the one that's been doing all this work for Nurse Fallon. And, you know, this is clear like nepotism, and the chief is just saying it like straight out in front of Christina. And I don't exactly know how that's like a good strategy, but Burke is there, my favorite guy ever. He responds and lets everybody know that Meredith is actually unavailable because she's helping with the guy with the nails in his head. So unfortunately, Meredith cannot be pulled in on this case. And after Burke tells everyone that Meredith is on this case with the guy with the nails in his head, Christina is immediately jealous. And it's like, I can't believe that you ended up with the best case, even though I showed up early and I did all of this work to try to like get the best case for myself. And Meredith is like, maybe you shouldn't have been so rude to me this morning, and you wouldn't have gotten that bad karma. And Burke just clearly thinks it's funny because Christina thought that she was sneaking her way onto the best surgery of the day. And in reality, there are other cases that are going on that are actually way bigger, way cooler. And she's just kind of pigeonholed herself into this other case that isn't going to be as exciting, but it's going to have a lot of work associated with it, including an enema. So everyone's laughing, ha ha ha. Christina gets stuck with an enema and this patient that is circling the drain. train. And Meredith, who got there at a normal hour and wasn't rude to her friend, gets to be on this really cool case with the guy with the nails in his head. So meanwhile, George and Alex are in the library doing research on other cases that have potentially had people with nails shot into their head. And it turns out that this has actually happened to like 23 other times, which honestly, I think that's kind of low. If you were to ask me how many people have shot nails into their head, I actually would think that it was probably higher than that. So Alex starts asking George, like, hey, do Meredith and Izzy actually walk around the house in their underwear? And George is like, yeah, they do. And Alex is like, and they don't care that you see them. They're not afraid of you like coming onto them or anything. And George is like, no, like I'm a nice guy, I'm respectable. They don't worry about that. And Alex is like, oh, so like sisters. They walk around the house naked like your sisters. And honestly, this comment is pretty upsetting to George because, you know, he's got such a big crush on Meredith. And Alex is just, honestly, he's just being a total D-bag and he's just being a jerk because he's, you know, he's jealous and no one likes him. He probably just honestly feels really threatened by George at this point because everyone likes George, but everyone hates Alex. Speaking of Izzy, it turns out that her patient, the one that sent her out of the room, Mr. Humphrey, he's a patient for a prostate biopsy. So they think that he might have prostate cancer. And Bailey and Izzy are in the scrub room and they're getting ready to scrub in on the biopsy. Izzy was already in there and Bailey walks in. Bailey asks Izzy, oh, is this guy ready for his surgery? And Izzy is like, yeah, I think so. Very unsure of herself. And Bailey's like, he's getting a prostate biopsy. If he was ready, you would know about it. I mean, obviously Izzy hasn't really been watching and is trying to stay as far away from this guy as possible. And so they both walk into the scrub room and Izzy's looking really just apprehensive and not wanting to be there at all. And Mr. Humphrey sees her and he absolutely starts losing his shit, like absolutely losing it. And he's like yelling and freaking out, like, get her out of here, get her out of here. I don't want her in my surgery. She's not allowed to be here. And Bailey's just looking around like, what did you do to this guy? Why is he like reacting this way? And Izzy is just really upset. And so she leaves. She immediately just leaves the room, leaves the surgery. After the biopsy, Bailey asks Izzy what that was all about. And Izzy just like, okay, so in order to put myself through college, I modeled. And there's a new campaign that came out for Bethany Whisper, and this guy saw it, and now he's freaking out. And Bailey's just like, well, you gotta nut up because you're a doctor now and I don't really care. You gotta like go and do your job. And I need you on this case. If this biopsy comes back positive and this guy has cancer, like you better show up to the surgery. And after getting back the results, of course, the guy is positive. Izzy and Bailey present the results to the attending doctor. So he's like the boss doctor, the main surgeon that's going to be on the case. And Bailey is asking the guy, you know, how do we make sure that this guy still has a functioning sex life afterwards? Like, how do we save this guy and make sure that he still has quality of life afterwards? And this doctor, he's like older and grumpy and just kind of like, oh, these new guys, you know, they always want to save the nerves and take risks. You know, I'm an old dog. I know what works. And he walks away and Bailey's like, everyone calls this surgeon Limp Harry because he never saves the nerves. So it looks like, for all intents and purposes, this guy is going to be impotent by the end of this because of the approach that this attending surgeon takes. Meanwhile, guess which douchebag finds the magazine ad? Yep. Our dear friend Alex has discovered Izzy's Bethany Whisper ad. He immediately starts just making photocopies and you just see him like hunched over a copier, like laughing to himself about making these copies. And so I'm like, aren't you supposed to be helping the guy with the nails in his head and like doing your job and stuff? Not reading magazines? Like, what grown man reads magazines? But I guess this was 2005, so who am I to judge? So the surgery with the guy with the nails in his head is obviously the biggest surgery in the hospital. Everyone is obsessed with watching it and they're all gathering in the gallery and everyone's just really excited to see what happens because this is truly just a unique case. But Dr. Burke is also one of the surgeons that wants to be in the gallery and watches this. So when he sees Christina come into the gallery to like hang out with all of her friends watching the surgery, he leans forward and is like, hey, Christina, have you gone and run the labs on her blood? Have you run the enema? Have you done this? Have you done that? And she's like, yeah, like I'll take care of it right after watching this surgery. Yeah, it's getting taken care of. And he just kind of stares her down and she's like, okay, I'll go take care of it right now. And Burke is clearly trying to teach Christina a lesson for getting in and stealing Nurse Fallon's case and, you know, being a little bit overexcited and a little bit over her skis about what she thought was going to happen for the day. And Christina is just obsessed. She's like, yeah, but after this test, I'm going to get the Whipple, right? After I go do these procedures, I'm going to get the Whipple. I'm going to get to scrub in with you, right, Dr. Burke? And he's like, go run the tests. We'll see what happens. Very much dangling that carrot there. And she's just totally obsessed with getting the surgery. And it's like very focused on getting the surgery to the point that she's really not even thinking about anything else, including the patient at hand. She's really just not thinking about it. And it's kind of clear that Dr. Burke is really just trying to keep Christina busy at this point, and he's punishing her a little bit. But the surgery with the guy with the nails in his head goes really, really well. Goes without a hitch. Goes incredibly. They're able to remove all of the nails successfully, and they're just waiting to see if the guy wakes up, you know, and if he remembers everything. Because of the position of everything, you know, that was pretty significant risk that he actually would lose memory or would lose his sight. You know, they won't know until the next day. So after the surgery with the guy with the nails in his head, after the big event is over, Meredith decides to go and see Nurse Fallon. And it turns out that she's never actually met Nurse Fallon, even though she worked with her mom for, 18 years. So she worked with her mom for all that time, but they never actually met. And Nurse Fallon is there surrounded by flowers and admirers and people that she used to work with. And she's clearly just this person that was really well loved at the hospital. And so when Meredith walks in, everybody kind of disperses and she introduces herself and says that her mom sends her regards. And Nurse Fallon is like, well, that doesn't sound like your mother. And Meredith was like, excuse me? And Nurse Fallon is like, Ellis Gray only has regards for Ellis Gray, but I think you already knew that. And Meredith just kind of stands there, and Nurse Fallon then asks, if Ellis is well, and asks if she's practicing. And Meredith lies and says, oh, yeah, she's practicing, and she's traveling. And, you can just kind of tell that Meredith is lying, and Nurse Fallon clearly doesn't believe her, but lets it lie. And Nurse Fallon is one of the people that knew Ellis the best, and, clearly had her number in a way that Meredith is frankly surprised to find out. Nurse Fallon can just tell that something is wrong, but she doesn't press her. And Meredith quickly is like, well, I just wanted to come and tell you that Ellis sends her regards, and then she quickly leaves. Later that night, Meredith goes to visit Ellis at work, and she's showing Ellis a photo album of her family. She says, hey, this is me when I was 4 years old, and this is your husband Thatcher, and this was our life together. This is your family. And Ellis clearly doesn't recognize them, doesn't recognize anyone, and she's just kind of far away and is very distant and oh, that's interesting, that's cool, I guess that's my family. She's so far gone that she just can't even focus, and that Meredith is clearly upset about how far gone her mom is. She starts making other conversation and says, oh, I saw Nurse Fallon today. All of a sudden Ellis lights up and is like, Liz, you saw Liz, how is she? I love her, she was excellent. And it's just this really sad moment where you see Meredith's face completely fall, because Ellis can't remember her own family, but she remembers this old coworker from decades ago, which speaks a lot to just probably some of the problems that Ellis and Meredith had, where Ellis was just so career focused and very, very focused on her job and was kind of abandoning Meredith a little bit. This is just one way her mom's disease is just really, really affecting her, because her mom can't even remember her. And the fact that she can remember her old coworkers, but not her own daughter, just probably brings up a ton of memories from her childhood of just feeling like she didn't matter as much as her mom's job. The next day, Meredith and Derek are rounding on Jorge, which is the name of the guy with the nails in his head, they're rounding on him to check on him and see how he did overnight, and it turns out that he has his sight. He can see everything, he's himself, it seems like everything is fine, and his wife is wearing this red dress, and she's like, Jorge, tell them what color my dress is, and it's a very just cute moment. They're so excited, but Derek is still not convinced that everything is okay, and he says, I really just want to do an MRI to make sure, and you know, if you're all okay, then we'll send you home, but we just need to make sure that everything is actually as okay as we think it is. Meanwhile, George and Izzy are fighting as they're entering the hospital because George went to the store and refused to buy tampons, which were on the grocery list, which I never had my roommates grab groceries for me. Like, I never had them do that errand for me, so this is not really relatable, but basically George refused to get them tampons, and Izzy is like, we really needed them. Why couldn't you get them? You said you would. And George is like, I am not your sister. And they're just like screaming and yelling at each other, and George is like, fine, I'm gonna take the stairs. And Izzy's like, good. And she runs over to the elevator, and people are holding the elevator for her. And as soon as she enters the elevator, it's just full of these dudes, and they're all snickering at her, and she's just like, what is your deal? Why are you laughing at me? What is the problem? And the elevator doors close, and you see there's a picture of her modeling photo taped to the outside of the door. Izzy still hasn't seen all the photos as she approaches the locker room, and there's just this huge commotion, and it's clear everyone is seeing the photos posted all over, and George is desperately trying to get her from entering, but because she's so mad at him, she just pushes him aside, pushes through, and then she sees all of her modeling photos just posted everywhere all over the locker room. And Alex steps to the front of the crowd, and he whispers, everyone settle down. We have Bethany Whisper in our presence. Oh my God, just the look on this guy's face. You just want to punch him so freaking hard. And Izzy's like, all right, you want to see it? And she proceeds to strip down to her underwear and shouts, everyone gather around to see the booty that put Izzy Stevens through med school. And then she walks up to Alex and says, you want to call me Dr. Model, that's fine. But just remember, while you're sitting on 200 grand of student loans, I'm out of debt. And then she's just like, boom, bam, done. And she gathers her clothes and she walks away like the queen she is. It's seriously like just this total girl power moment where Alex is finally getting his for being a total D-bag. What coworker posts pictures of you in your underwear and then like also still gets to keep his job? Seriously. So good for her for like stepping up and like standing up for herself. It's just this total badass moment where Izzy Stevens, who has just been this like really sensitive, clearly a very good looking person, very sensitive, just wants to see the best in everybody, and she's pushed to her breaking point and she's like, no, absolutely not, we're not doing this, and stands up for herself, and it's just so good. So after this, Izzy goes to see that patient that won't let her treat him, and she slams a copy of the photo down from the magazine in front of him, and she's like, this is who I was. This isn't who I am anymore. I'm a doctor and I'm a surgeon and I'm good at my job and I need you to let me do it. And the guy proceeds to talk to Izzy, and he's like, I fantasized about the woman in this photo, whoever she is. I fantasized about her and I'm not proud about it. I have prostate cancer, and later today they're going to sling me up, they're going to cut me open, and they're going to effectively neuter me. Is it so wrong that I don't want the woman that I fantasized about in this photo to witness my emasculation? Oh my God. Oh my gosh, this poor guy. And I mean, he definitely didn't handle himself well in this situation, but you just feel like, oh my gosh, like, can you imagine? Like, imagine your favorite celebrity, the person that you think is just the most attractive in this entire world, and they have a front row seat to just watching you get totally like castrated. I mean, I can't even imagine, and it just made me go like, oh, holy shit, like, I don't think I would want that either. I probably would have reacted the same way. There's still like a way to handle yourself in that situation, and he really wasn't fair to Izzy, but like, I totally get it. I was pretty much on his side at this point. So Christina is still treating Nurse Fallon, And she's just 100% devoted to her and to everything that she needs. But the Whipple still hasn't been scheduled. The surgery that Christina has been working so hard for still hasn't been scheduled. And she's starting to get like frustrated at this point because the patient is also like circling the drain, is absolutely doing super, super terrible. And so she pulls Burke off to the side and is like, we have to do something. She's not doing well. She's circling the drain. I don't understand why you're not doing anything. And Burke is like, we are doing something. And Christina is like, no, seriously, we're not doing anything to save this woman's life. Like, she's circling the drain. I've run all these tests and she's just not getting better. And then she like stops and she realizes, she's like, oh, Nurse Fallon was never there to get better. She's there to die. The surgery was never going to happen. Christina, having been treating this patient now for 2 days, is finally realizing like, oh, I had this all wrong. She's here because, you know, they wanted to make her comfortable. She worked in that hospital her whole life and they wanted to make sure that she had the best end of life care, not so that she could get some magical surgery and maybe get better. But, you know, Christina being Christina, she was just super aggressive and didn't stop to take in any of the facts. She was just really obsessed with getting her surgery at all costs. And that's the lesson that Burke was trying to teach her through this whole thing, which was like, no, go run these tests, go take care of her, go see what's going on. Like, you're gonna end up seeing what I'm seeing, which is that like there's nothing that anyone can do. After doing the MRI, it turns out that Jorge actually has a very small brain tumor. So that's what was causing all of the dizzy spells. And they honestly wouldn't have discovered it otherwise if he hadn't had that incident shooting himself in the head with all the nails. They probably wouldn't have found out for a very long time. Derek explains that if they try to remove it, that there's a high probability that he could get 5 to 10 years of life, maybe, but he's probably going to lose all of his memories, his personality, everything that makes him him. And then the other option is to do radiation and all of that, but that'll only give him 2 to 3 years and he still might lose himself. It's just unbelievably sad because he clearly has this wonderful relationship with his wife and they had no idea. They had just gotten all of this great news that his surgery had gone well and, you know, that he was going to be fine. And then all of a sudden he actually has this huge underlying issue that they didn't know about. And his wife is clearly just so upset. And I mean, they both are. And it's just so heartbreaking. And Meredith is standing in the back of the room watching Derek deliver the news. And she's just getting super, super emotional about the fact that this couple is looking down the barrel of losing each other through losing their memories, which is just really hitting home for her based on everything that she's going through with her own mother. In her emotional moment, Meredith decides to go back and see Nurse Fallon again. And she's talking with Nurse Fallon and she's like, I told my mother about you. I talked to her and she remembers you. And Nurse Fallon is like, of course she remembers me. We worked together for 18 years. That woman never forgot a damn thing. And then Meredith just starts like cry laughing when she says that. She just loses all control, can't stop cry laughing. And she goes, I'm sorry. It's really not funny, but I just can't help myself. And Nurse Fallon, you know, sobers up and it's just kind of like, what's her diagnosis? What's wrong with her? She can just see right through Meredith and knows that everything is not okay. And Meredith shares with her that she has Alzheimer's and she doesn't want anyone to know and that she's the only one that Ellis will allow to come and visit her. And Nurse Fallon is like, and I bet you she had the nursing home sign a contract to that effect, didn't she? And Meredith laughs and says, yep. And Nurse Fallon is like, what a bitch. And they both laugh. And it also clearly shows how much of this burden Meredith is really bearing on her own, where Ellis isn't allowing anyone to visit her except for Meredith. And so Meredith can't even lean on anybody to share in effectively the slow loss of her mother. A little bit later, Meredith, Christina, and Izzy are hanging out, taking a break. Christina is just laying on a bench, reading a magazine and lamenting ranting about how Nurse Fallon was just sent there to die and how awful a fate that is. And Meredith says, I don't know, like, I think it's nice that she's going to be surrounded by people that she knows and people that can take care of her. And Izzy agrees. But Christina is really just, you know, disappointed that she isn't getting her surgery anymore, and is also like, no. If it were me and I were sick, I'd want them to like just cut me open and do anything that they could to try and save me. Like, you do everything possible to make sure that I have my best chance. And Christina's flipping through the pages of this magazine and she holds it up. She's like, you're 8 feet tall, your hair is down to there, you look perfect. If I were you, I wouldn't do anything except for be naked. I would just be naked all the time. I wouldn't have any skills. I wouldn't do anything. I would just be naked. And Izzy laughs and she's like, you know, it's just makeup and it's just Photoshop. It's not real. And Christina's like, you know, we hate you, right? And, you know, they all laugh and it's kind of a funny moment, but it's clearly like the opposite of the way the men responded to her photo spread. So at that moment, Izzy gets called away. She gets paged by Bailey to go to this guy's surgery, and she walks in and she's like, I can't do it. I can't walk in on this guy's surgery. He doesn't want me there. And Bailey is like, no, what this guy wants is a working prostate. What this guy wants is to not have cancer, and he wants to live. And your job is to make sure that he lives. You've got to wrap your head around that and go in there and do your job. And Bailey's just like, so you have a decision to make. What are you going to do? You have to make a choice. Like, are you going to stand up? Are you going to do your job? Or are you going to let this define you? Meanwhile, Meredith goes and checks on Jorge and his wife, and they have both decided to move forward with the surgery, even though that it will mean that he's going to basically lose all his memories and not even be able to recognize his wife. And Meredith, given everything that she has gone through, just gets super, super emotional. And she starts talking to his wife and she's like, it's like he'll be there, but he won't be there, and he won't know you, and he won't understand, and you have no idea what that's going to do to you. And his wife is basically like, this is Jorge's decision. It's not mine. And if this is what Jorge wants, then I can do that for him. And if he can't remember us, then I can remember us for the both of us. And that's enough for me. Of course, if he's dying and this is his last few years and it's his life, like, he needs to be able to make that decision for himself. And she's just, like, this woman just being like, if he can't remember, I'll remember for us both, and that's enough for me. I'm just like, I can't handle it. Meredith is just like so upset about it and is just pressing the wife, and she's getting more and more upset. And Derek walks up and sees them, and he's like, hey, Meredith, hello, you can't do that. It's their decision. Like, leave them alone. And Meredith is just like very emotional, and it's just like, she just doesn't understand. She needs to understand. And of course, no one knows what Meredith is going through, so she's just erratically acting emotionally at patients, at strangers, and like no one knows why. But you really see the toll of her mom's condition really showing and taking effect on her. So for Mr. Humphrey's surgery, Izzy opts to stay in the scrub room. You know, she doesn't want to invade this guy's privacy, and I actually totally agree with her decision here. I think that Bailey is the one that's wrong in this situation. If the patient doesn't want her there, I totally agree with that decision. So Izzy stays in the scrub room and George stays with her. And Izzy asks George if he really felt like she and Meredith were emasculating him by asking him to grab them tampons and walking around the house the way they do. And George, like, very bashfully is like, no, I don't feel that way. But like, you totally do. But it's this nice moment, and Izzy apologizes and says like, hey, I didn't ever mean to make you feel that way, and I'm really, really sorry. And then they start talking about the surgery, and Izzy's like, they call this guy Limp Harry. This guy's gonna walk out of here without his working penis. He's not ever going to be able to have a normal sex life again. And all of a sudden, Izzy just has this like aha moment, barges into the surgery and is like, you have to save the nerves. She's like yelling at the attending surgery and at Bailey. She's like, you have to save the nerves. And Bailey tries to shut her up, and Izzy is like, no, you told me that it's my job to give the patient what they want and to make sure that they are okay. And this is what the patient wants. He wants his erection, so you have to save the nerves. If you can do it, you have to do it. And Bailey just kind of stands there and looks at the surgeon and is like, well, what do you think? And the old guy is like, well, you know, if this doesn't work and this guy's surgery isn't cured, this is on you. And he ends up saving the nerves. And afterwards, Izzy and Bailey are scrubbing out, and Bailey is like, you know, now every time that guy gets a rise, he's gonna be thinking about you. And Izzy just laughs and shakes her head. But it was just like, she was able to have empathy for this patient, that even though he had had some pretty significant problems with her in the beginning, she gained this empathy for his situation and ended up advocating for him and overcoming her own fears and overcoming her own, you know, misgivings about her past to go and be the doctor that she needed to be for this guy. So Christina is back with Nurse Fallon, and Christina has really softened now that she's figured out that Nurse Fallon is basically just in the hospital to die. And Christina's like, you could have told me, like, you could have just told me what was going on with you and I wouldn't have been so, you know, like bitchy and pushy with you. And Nurse Fallon, clearly just doing worse and worse, she laughs and she's like, yeah, but where would the fun in that be? You consider it a hazing ritual. And she just laughs, and then all of a sudden she flatlines. And Christina has grown to really love Nurse Fallon over the last couple of days, and she's very upset, and she starts trying to resuscitate Nurse Fallon, but it's not working. And then the code team rushes into the room and they're like, hey, she has a DNR, you're not supposed to do anything, you cannot resuscitate this person. And Christina's like, I don't care, like, she needs to live. And you know, she's just trying desperately to resuscitate the patient. Dr. Burke finally shows up and he holds Christina back and he's like, she has a DNR, you can't do anything, you have to let her go. And the chief is there, and this whole team and all these people that really care about Nurse Fallon are there. And Christina finally like understands what's going on. Burke and the chief both kind of look at Christina and they're like, have you ever called it before? And she's like, no, I've never done that. And chief is like, well, you need to call it, you need to call her time of death. And so Christina calls her time of death and then races out of the room, just bolts out. And Burke follows her into the stairwell, and Christina's standing there just clearly emotional and trying to pull herself together. And she turns to face Burke and is trying to hold it together, and Burke is like, you can't lose it like that. You've got to keep it together. And Christina's like, yes, okay, I'll go now. I'll go take care of it. And Burke just grabs her by the wrists and pulls her in, and he's like, you have to let her go. And they're like super close together, and there's like clearly an energy, and you're like, okay. Well, for someone who at the beginning of this episode who was criticizing someone so harshly for getting involved with an attending, there's some pretty sexual energy in this stairwell, if I do say so myself. So back with Jorge, Meredith is still just really, really upset about everything that's happened. And I think the toll of what's going on with her mom is just finally starting to really break her down. She's standing outside of their room again and is really just wanting to say something. And Derek walks by and he just shakes his head at her and is like, no, leave them alone. And then cuts to Meredith at the nursing home, helping her mom alone, walking her down the stairs. And then after that, it cuts to a scene of Meredith having what looks like breakfast with Derek. It looks very much like a date. Okay. Well, after all of that, I guess now the response is that they're going on a date. It was just like a weird cut where Meredith is clearly having this very emotional time with her mom, and that's kind of been her storyline this episode. And then the episode ends with Meredith sitting down to have brunch with Derek. And that's the end of the episode, guys. I know we wrapped up all of our storylines, but it kind of ends abruptly with this reveal that Meredith has decided to finally go on a date with Derek, which, like, all right, I guess we're gonna have to see what happens. I'm a little disappointed in Meredith for not just like being the professional and not going out with Derek and, you know, finally just breaking down and going out with someone that's her boss. But, you know, at the same time, like, we know it's one of these like great television romances, like, spoiler alert, you know, it's a 15-year-old show. If you don't know that McDreamy is like a thing for Meredith, then I can't help you. You know, there's part of me that's just like, God, man, what a risky decision that you're making. It was a cool episode with a lot of growth for all of our main characters, except for Alex, really. Like, Alex is really the one that was just kind of like, hey, I'm an asshole. Not a lot of growth there, but really, really good, really rich episode. I hope that you guys enjoyed this retelling and enjoyed this get ready with me. Yes, I am wearing a black lip gloss. I have feelings about it. I've never worn something like this before, but I recently purchased a black gloss and was like, well, I don't know, why not? I don't have anywhere to go, so why not? But this look was really, honestly, pretty hard to put together. I really struggled through this eye look, I'm not gonna lie, and it definitely doesn't look anything like I wanted it to, but I still kind of like it. It's just different, and it's just fun. That's what this is all about. This is about fun, and this is about sitting down and playing with makeup and spending time together. So thank you guys so much for joining me for this episode, and let me know what you think down in the comments about the black lip gloss. Yay or nay? Be honest. This is probably just not going to be a look for me, but let me know what you think down in the comments, and let me know down in the comments what you think about the reveal of Meredith now going on a date with McDreamy. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing and liking this video. It really, really helps my channel. It helps other people to find these videos, and it just really means a lot to me. If you haven't already said hello in the comments, do so. I love meeting you guys. I really appreciate you guys being here. We are 102 strong, which is just so exciting. I was hoping to reach 100 by the end of February, and we did it. So thank you guys so much for your support. It means so much to me. And that's it, you guys. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.